Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Tonight, we debate the UPA's report card. Is it good, bad or in between? That's the big question we're asking tonight. Joining me on the show tonight, a very special panel. We're joined by the Education Minister, Mr. Kapil Sibal from here in Delhi. We're also joined by Senior Congress Leader and Rajya Sabha MP, Manishankar Iyer. From the BJP, Mr. Chandan Mitra, also the MD and editor of The Pioneer, Mr. T.N. Nainan, the Chairman and Editorial Director of the Business Standard, and Sankarshan Thakur, the roving editor of The Telegraph. Let me first begin with Kapil Sibal tonight. Mr. Sibal, you're one of the more dynamic ministers in this government, many say. What would you describe as the major positives of UPA II in the last 1 year?
Well, I think basically, if you really look at the macro performance of this government, let's look at finance, for example. Ultimately, it's how a government runs its finances that is key to success. And I think despite the fact that there was a global financial crisis, government of India has not been hit by it as much. We've still had a over 7% growth rate. So the economy has performed exceptionally well, despite all the drawbacks. And we've got accolades from all over the world. So I think in terms of management of our finances, this government has done exceptionally well. If you really look at our security concerns, you will find that, that the Home Ministry has dealt with the matter efficiently, with a long-term point of view as well as short-term strategy. There has been a revamp of our security agencies. And systems are being built, which of course cannot be built overnight, to ensure that there is a better level of comfort in the security environment, which I think the Home Ministry has been able to achieve in the short term and certainly will be able to achieve in the long term. In terms of infrastructure, we are moving ahead fast in infrastructure, and I'm talking about both human infrastructure as well as physical infrastructure. If you look at trade and commerce and you look at environment, we have a far more proactive policy in UPA II, both in trade and environment. We are not considered to be deal breakers either in Copenhagen or in the WTO, and the global community is looking at us for collaboration and cooperation. So I think overall, if you look at the macro picture, the government has done exceptionally well.
Then, in your honest assessment, then what's been the downside? Where do you think the government could have performed better?
Well, you know, Nidhi, I can take each of these issues and say the UPA could have done better, because there is always room for improvement. Nobody can ever say that any policy framework is perfect. So if you ask me that question up front, I will say, yes, we could have done better on many fronts. But this is life. I mean, life is not perfect. Policies are not perfect. Governments are not perfect. But if you look at the overall situation, I would say that the UPA at a macro level has performed exceptionally well.
But Mr. Sibal, the UPA rode back to power last year on an unexpectedly strong mandate. I think even the Congress party didn't expect those numbers. But do you think a year later that much of that euphoria has dissipated? There is a perception that UPA II is more shaky than when you came to power.
Well, you know, there is a difference between UPA I and UPA II. And the difference is the following. We had ideological support through a common minimum program in UPA I. We don't have a common minimum program in UPA II. The nature of the verdict is such that there is far greater fluidity because there are many disparate parties in UPA II. But the fluidity is such that it doesn't jeopardize the life of this government in any way. And if you look at it from one standpoint, all policy framework of this government and all policy initiatives have been passed despite the fractured polity that you talked about. Look at the reforms in education that we've been able to push through in terms of the legislations. There has been no dissent. Look at in terms of finance as to what we have done. There's been very little dissent on that. In terms of our macroeconomic policies, we've done exceptionally well.
Tuba.com